This is Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. This is Arab Talk with Jess Jamal. I'm Jess Nam.
And this is Jamal Dajani.
Jamal, we have a great show today, but before we get going, I have some breaking news. And the breaking news is that earlier this week, Mike Pompeo was speaking with Benjamin Netanyahu, the embattled prime minister of Israel. And this was in the context of announcing basically the approval of the annexation and the theft of the Golan Heights. The United States was changing decades of international opinion and law on this matter. And he happily announced to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and at least 66% of the citizens of Israel, and announced that he believed that Trump was sent by God to save the people of Israel.
Okay, so let's put this in.
But that's
into
breaking
context
news. Breaking news.
And just to make sure, well, it's not that breaking now because this has been going on for a while. However,
but news from God, it's a big deal. That
it is. Well, let's just be accurate with what transpired, Jess. So in an interview in Jerusalem, and this is an interview that was conducted by the Christian Broadcast Network, the CBN, Chris Mitchell asked Pompeo, could it be that President Trump right now has been sort of raised for such a time as this, just like Queen Esther, to help save the Jewish people from the Iranian menace? Of course, Esther is the main heroine of the Jewish holiday of Purim, which coincided with this conversation, which was celebrated that week. And Pompeo's answer was, as a Christian, I certainly believe that's possible. So then he added that he's confident that the Lord is at work here when he sees the remarkable history of the faith in this place and the work that our administration's done to make sure that this democracy in the Middle East, meaning Israel, that this Jewish state remains. So the remarks, by the way, as you've said, came shortly after Trump announced that the U.S. will recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, overturning long-standing U.S. policy toward the area.
And international. But let's break it down a little bit, Jamal, because you gave the quote a lot of substantial context. But let's look at the meaning of what Mike Pompeo and the Christian Broadcasting Network, the CBN, is actually saying. To put it bluntly, there are people who are running this government, the U.S. government, specifically the Secretary of State, who are basing their policy of the U.S. Of the United States on the belief that God is somehow has anointed, done something, elected, divinely intervened to elect Trump, not so much for the United States.
To raise Trump, actually.
To raise Trump in such a way as to support the people of Israel. Now, if we take a step back, not only is that disturbing, not only is it reckless, not only is it, there are so many adjectives that we could use. Let's flip it upside down, Jamal, and try to imagine for a moment if the shoe was on the other foot and somebody said, well, we believe that someone was brought by Allah to serve the people of, and fill in the blank. Whatever country or place you wanted to do. Would not there be an absolute outrage, a kind of, mass kind of attack on anybody in this country who would dare say such a thing in a country where we have a clear separation between state and church, that it somehow privileges the Secretary of State, who is sworn to the Constitution of the United States, to make such an outrageous comment, also in the context of the attacks on Ilhan Omar, who is accused of worshiping or believing in Sharia law just because she wears hijab. The utter hypocrisy, let alone the absolute, like, mind-blowing concept that our foreign policy is being dictated in this way.
Well,
It's
I
staggering.
mean, if you think about it, this whole idea that something is divine or something is biblical, that now we use it for
our foreign policy.
our foreign policy and for diplomacy, then that the foreign policy of the United States is somehow dictated
By the Bible.
Or by evangelical endeavors,
or
right?
one interpretation of the Bible.
And it really, takes you back to the Crusader times. I mean,
Yes.
God has willed it. This was the phrase that was used
During the Crusades.
During the Crusades to entice criminals at the time. A lot of them they recruited through criminals and people who were pretty much sentenced to serve life in prison and in the dungeons, that they will see salvation if they went to Jerusalem because God willed it, and to annihilate its inhabitants.
At the time,
At
yes.
the time,
Yes.
by the way, they were both Muslims, Jews, and Christians who were slaughtered in Jerusalem. And so now, they're taking us back to these times of the Crusader times, saying that God has willed it somehow.
But how do they get away?
And Trump was sent, by the way. I mean, okay, if they have chosen, let's say, Mother Teresa, I might have went along. But the fact that God brings somebody
like Trump
to be the salvation for humanity, the salvation for Israel, the salvation for mankind is laughable. But it is dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, if it weren't so dangerous, it would be laughable, Jamal, no doubt. But the danger that our foreign policy is being dictated by evangelical Christians,
and it is,
who are determining that our strategic interests in the world should be driven by biblical interests and a particular biblical interpretation, which is a right-wing, extreme evangelical perspective, should frighten every single American. Should frighten every single American that the dictates of careful analysis, of diplomacy, of trying to act in the best interests of the United States and our long-term interests should be dictated by a handful of evangelical Christians is mortifying, is scary. And I will also say, if I were part of the Jewish faith and someone told me that Trump came to save me,
I'd be very worried.
I would not sleep well at night about that, Jamal. I would not sleep well.
But look at the timing, Jess. It's all connected. The timing, number one, of course, there is a major land grab, which we know that Israel has been grabbing lands from Palestine, from Syria, from Lebanon. They still hold on to the Shebaa farms and so forth to kind of give them the green light. This is at a time when we try to oppose Russian hold over Crimea.
Right.
So imagine if your Secretary of State today said, or your President said, I'm going to sign a declaration that Crimea is Russian. The whole world would have been upside down.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. But now, basically, Donald Trump is playing not only God, he was sent by God, because this is what at least the evangelists think that he was, but also he is now playing the role of Balfour.
Yes.
Takes you back to the Balfour
Declaration.
When you had Great Britain, which was basically the superpower of the day, to dictate and decide the whole future of the whole Palestinian nation, to just give their land away to the Zionists from Europe, right?
Exactly.
And so now, this is similar. For Syria, he's playing that same role, signing off the Golan Heights, the occupied Syrian Golan Heights, to Israel. I mean, and again, there is only one superpower in the world, and that is the United States. And he's acting like an emperor. He's
Right.
acting like we have this
Right.
empire. The empire can give people's land to others. They can take territory. They can, allow the aggressor to hold on. I mean, what happened to the international standards?
No.
What happened to
No.
United Nations resolutions? What happened to any
that's
of these
exactly
things?
right, Jamal.
It's meaningless.
That's exactly right, Jamal. You're exactly right. Let's keep in mind, for the sake of sanity and for the sake of international law and for international diplomacy, let's just, for the sake of sanity for the moment, Jamal, remind our listeners that the Golan Heights is part of Syria. It's part of Syria as part of international law. During the War of 67, the Israeli military occupied the Golan Heights. It has been occupied Golan Heights since 1967, full stop, fully supported by the international community, fully, under international law, which says occupied land cannot be settled, cannot be taken over, you can't just take it.
Well, this is actually part of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
That's exactly right.
And not only the occupation is wrong, but the transfer of population.
You can't do it.
Transfer the occupation of the occupier into occupied territory is a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. This applies to the Golan Heights. It also applies to the West Bank.
And Gaza.
With all the settlements there. And the transfer of the population of the occupied land, like what Israel has been doing for many years, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and Syrians there, it's also a violation. And Israel has been getting away with this. So there is a question from one of our viewers, or a comment from one of our viewers on Facebook Live, and he's saying, well, pretty much like, why every Arab nation remains silent?
Well, let's, I have some good news and some bad news for our listener who's asking, I think, an excellent question, which is, where is Mohammed bin Salman? Where is King Abdullah? Where are the great Arab leaders of this time who have said nothing? The only Arab leader that has said anything, Jamal, has been obviously Bashar al-Assad, who says,
that's my land.
That's my land. You can't do that. Well, the bad news is that...
and I also have to say, the residents of the Golan Heights, the Syrian residents, or who are the vast majority are Druze, they demonstrated,
as they should,
raising the Syrian flag and saying that we are part of Syria. We're not part of Israel. So they reject,
as they should,
that no one has consulted them, who they should belong to, and they rejected that annexation that was green-lighted basically by Donald Trump.
But the bad news that I was going to get to, Jamal, the real bad news is that unfortunately many, if not Arab leaders now, and this is a distinction from Arab leaders from the citizens of the Arab world, Arab leaders are complicit with this illegality that is being perpetrated in the Golan Heights, that is being perpetrated in the West Bank, Gaza, and in historic Palestine. So could we expect Mohammed bin Salman, who murders his own critics, who is ready to sell Palestinians down the river, literally, to stand up and be the leader? Do we expect al-Sisi, the president, who managed to accede to the presidency in a major coup, would we expect Sisi to say anything? Of course not. These Arab leaders are despots. They're dictators. They oppress their own people. They murder their own citizens. We would not expect these individuals to support international law. What we did hear, however, despite this disappointment from the lack of response from Arab leaders, we heard from the European Union. We heard from African countries. We heard from countries all over the world who said...
We've heard from the United Nations.
We've heard from the United Nations. We've heard from all over the world for people who said, the United States, we do not agree with you. You cannot annex this land. It is not part of Israel. It is Syrian land, and it will continue to be Syrian land until the occupation stops. Full stop. So we can't expect Arab leaders to do anything, unfortunately, because they are just as complicit in this and this I don't even know what to call it, this thumbing your nose at international law and thumbing your nose at justice and thumbing your nose against the people of Syria who live in the Golan Heights and who've lived there for, eons, to somehow say just because Trump has, and by the way, this is what's interesting, Jamal, all he did was sign an executive order. This has no significant meaning other than it's an executive order from the president.
I tend to disagree, Jess, and that's why I draw the analogy of the Balfour. Declaration, because again, the Balfour Declaration did not garner international support. Of course, it predates the United Nations, but it was at the time a declaration made by the superpower of that time, which was Great Britain, making a promise, basically, to give away Palestinian land to Zionist colonial settlers.
Right.
This was the declaration, and it became a reality. Today, we have Donald Trump, who is the president of the United States, the only superpower on earth. He is making a similar declaration. It might look like a piece of paper, just a declaration. Yes, it violates all international laws. It violates every single, United Nations resolution. Nevertheless, I think it's a very important piece of paper. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu had a wide smile on his face, and he was running around saying that this is the best president for Israel in the history of the United States, because it's pretty big. I mean, Donald Trump, within a year, he recognized Israel as the capital, Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He gave away, or pretty much gave his blessing for Israel to complete its annexation of the occupied Golan Heights. I think this is very important. The only way you can reverse this, sure, the United Nations, I agree with you, has not accepted this. The international community, for sure. There'll be some who will, like we'll see, similarly to some of the countries who are now moving their embassies into Jerusalem.
Well, I think there's only two.
Yeah, but there are people who will agree. But what I'm saying, why it's very dangerous, this is a declaration made by a superpower country, and the United States controls all the cards in the Middle East and beyond, at least at this time, unless somehow you have major opposition within Congress and the Senate.
Well, we're going to get to that, Jamal.
They will not do that.
No. There is no major opposition.
They are not. Or you have a new president who will basically rescind this letter. So unless you have that, you know what? Benjamin Netanyahu or any Israeli prime minister after him is not going to move 1 inch out of the Golan Heights.
Well, Jamal, I think that's a very good analysis, and I think that when you're juxtapose that analysis next to the failure of Arab leadership, which we have to be very clear about, that the failure of the Egyptian president and Mohammed bin Salman, the king, essentially the king of Saudi Arabia right now, and any of the Gulf leaders and any of the other 22 leaders, 21 minus Syria, leaders of the Arab League, really, it's an embarrassment to think that they couldn't marshal. Even the Arab League, which is completely a joke, couldn't get their act together, Jamal, to do a declaration that basically says we condemn what the United States has done in regards to the...
But back to the topic of God now has anointed Donald Trump to save...
If I were the...
think about it. I really like to read the lines because I don't want to misquote anyone. I don't want to...
I'm not misquoting, Jamal.
And look at this crazy statement in this day and age, and let's also think about it in terms if it was another leader or if another country or another faith has said basically that, and these are the words of our Secretary of State, where we are in a country a country with a constitution
Apparently
and a
not.
separation,
Apparently
the
not.
separation of power
Church and state.
and the separation of church and state, right?
Apparently not.
So here is you have the Secretary of State who is basically agreeing with the Christian Broadcast Network interviewer who said, could it be that President Trump right now has been raised or has been sort of raised for such a time as this, just like Queen Esther, to help save the Jewish people from the Iranian menace? And then our Secretary of State says, as a Christian, I certainly believe that's possible.
As a Christian.
Then he adds, confident that the Lord is at work here. So the Lord has anointed Donald Trump to save the Jewish people. The Lord has given, basically, Donald Trump, he gave him his real estate license. Well, we know anyway, Donald Trump is into the real estate to kind of sign off on the deed of the Syrian people
apparently God,
on behalf of Israel.
Apparently God is the one that gave Donald Trump his real estate license. And I mean this in all sincerity, that, Israel supporters right now, whether it be AIPAC or both houses of the Congress, may have some temporary, good feeling at this kind of move by President Trump. But for them to put their faith in someone like Donald Trump, who is, arguably among the most unethical, immoral, and what we'll come to see as time goes on, has done more illegalities than anybody. For them to feel comfortable with that, I think is going to be really misplaced. What I do want to say, though, let's turn the tables, Jamal.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Let's turn the tables. Let's find someone in the Congress. What if Ilhan Omar says, Allah has told me that we should, that Allah has put me here to give North Carolina,
just to give the Golan Heights back to Syria.
Give the Golan,
which is, by the way, it's
already
justifiable because it's their land. But let's say that God gave her that.
What do you think would happen?
Listen, Jess. I mean, I just tell you one thing. I mean, now we are seeing the Islamophobes coming out of the woodwork every single day, and we haven't started to talk about.
No, we will.
What happened?
We have to talk about that
in New Zealand. But just to give you something that just happened, just a couple of days ago, Jess, this week. An Egyptian American doctor in New Jersey. This is guys, if you don't know the story, I think you should look it up. So this Egyptian doctor from New Jersey, he builds a new house, and just like you'll see that in a lot of homes in the Middle East or something, he puts MashaAllah, Tabarak Allah. So he says, God bless, and what God has willed, God bless. This is the translation of MashaAllah, Tabarakallah.
Yeah, but basically God bless this house.
Yeah, this is God bless this house. This is similar to a Jewish family putting the mezuzah in front of the door.
Or the cross.
Or anything like this.
It's not a big deal.
So they have an uproar in that town. A resident was going around distributing flyers that this is absurd and un-American.
It's Sharia law in New Jersey.
To put that in that small town. And I mean, this sounds like we're making up stuff here.
I wish we were, but we're not.
We're not. So on a little thing like this is an American citizen, a successful Egyptian American doctor. He's been thanking God for his blessing and wants to have some blessing for his house. And this is basically gets attacked. And this is, by the way, in the Packanack Lake Wayne in New Jersey, community there. And by the way, I have something also. I was looking at the picture. He also has the American flag on his house.
I guess that doesn't matter.
So he has the God bless, and so he gets attacked, and the flyer calls the community to fly our flag and attend an upcoming association's meeting to discuss the un-American building, claiming the structure will affect us will affect all of us. This is the level of Islamophobia that we are witnessing in this country.
Yeah, and I think that's, and unfortunately, Jamal, I really think that's the tip of the iceberg, because this week, I mean, that story, which is really disturbing, as you said, it's a very, and I will say, proud Egyptian American doctor in New Jersey who's happy to be here, happy to raise his family here, pays a lot of taxes, and just like people in the Jewish faith and Christians all over this country who may hang the Christian cross in their home and say, God bless this home, he does the same thing, is being attacked. This is also the same week, Jamal, that AIPAC is in town. And if we want to look at hypocrisy and we want to look at how, what an effect that this influence is having in our country right now, we can just turn to one interesting comment made by a congressman. And I want to talk about Steny Hoyer.
Okay.
Steny Hoyer is
I know where you're going there.
So Ilhan Omar, was viciously attacked, as we know, and continues to be attacked, because she says, why cannot we just discuss foreign policy in this country and really have a good discussion about whether or not uncritical support of Israel is good for this country. She gets attacked. She gets accused of being anti-Semitic. She gets called into question about, claiming that there's dual loyalties when there are no dual loyalties. And yet we have Steny Hoyer, a congressman from the 5th District in Maryland. He gets up in front of AIPAC, Jamal, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, we'll get the exact quote here in a second, but the paraphrase is, dual loyalties, let me be the first to say that my love for Israel and my support for Israel is just as strong as my support for the United States.
So if Ilhan Omar said the same thing, my love for Somalia
and my love for this country,
and this is just,
she would be impeached.
The reaction?
She would be impeached. She would be called. She would be called a U.S. hater, and yet a U.S. congressman. Now, in all defense, Steny Hoyer has been criticized. He's tried to walk back the statement, but it's tough to walk back a statement of a U.S. congressman who basically flaunts his love, equal love of the state of Israel with his district in Maryland. I have to tell you, of all of the outrageous things that congressmen have done,
well, let's talk about the AIPAC first of all, because that's all part of that. So I looked at their agenda, and it's a long agenda, right? And all their speakers.
Right.
And so I can translate it in a couple of things. One, we love Israel. Israel is a democracy. Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Omar. We love Israel. Israel is a democracy. Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Omar, Ilhan Omar. Every single speaker who came
is about Ilhan
they
Omar.
Pledged their loyalty and their support to Israel.
Their
and
dying
how
support.
It's the only democracy in the Middle East, and how Ilhan Omar is an evil person. They're so obsessed with her at that conference.
They are obsessed.
They didn't say a single word about the annexation of the Golan Heights. They did not say anything about Benjamin Netanyahu racist nation-state law,
which we'll talk about
and
here
apartheid.
Yeah.
They didn't mention anything about. They didn't say anything about all the scandals surrounding Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the whole obsession that they had. Of course, some observers will at least we can comment on this, that they are weaker this year than how they were last year, because
they're definitely weaker.
Because basically all the presidential candidates didn't show up. Although our Senator
Kamala
Harris did not go to AIPAC, but she invited their representatives to her office.
I have news for Kamala Harris, Jamal.
She's not getting my vote.
No,
that's the news.
You can't have it both ways. You can't announce to the progressive majority element of the Democratic Party that you're not going to AIPAC and then invite them to your office with arms open, just like she did last year, Jamal, when she
went from the back
She
door.
went to the back door and gave a private talk. Kamala, you can't have it. Kamala, you're speaking to a conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, who says that the state of Israel should be for Jewish people only, and that means 66% of the population only. That some 30 to 33% of the people who happen to be citizens are not real citizens, Kamala. And you, as a former attorney general, can do that?
It's not the
Come
issue.
on.
It's not the issue that she is, of course, our senator from California, and she was former attorney general.
Give me a break,
and
Kamala.
She started right here in San Francisco as the district attorney. But she also claims to be progressive.
She's not progressive.
And then she's progressive on everything except for Palestine.
She's a pep. By the way, Jamal, we're at 89.5 FM here in San Francisco, live on KPOO. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook Live, Jamal Dajani 2, and we're streaming live on, KPO.com.
That's right.
So is she really progressive?
No, she's not.
Of course not.
And
when it
comes to this, I think this was a total disappointment because every other potential or every other candidate basically did not make the pilgrimage this year.
So they
to AIPAC.
They didn't do the Steny Hoyer thing that I'm proud to have dual loyalty. I mean, basically what Steny Hoyer said, Jamal, said I'm proud to have a dual loyalty.
Yes, that's what he said.
I'm proud. He actually said, let me say this proud. Like he was loud and proud, giving the message that I'm proud to have dual loyalty. I'm just trying to think, Jamal, if you or I or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib or Ayanna Pressley or any of the other progressive Congress people would have the audacity to say that they have a loyalty to anything else other than this country, what would befall them? What would happen to them in terms of the political catastrophe that would befall them? But it's okay to do it at AIPAC, to announce that you have such strong fealty to the state of Israel.
Well, I mean, after all, Secretary Pompeo and others have anointed that they say that God has sent Trump to save the Jewish people.
If I were in that group, I would have some anxiety.
So I wanna switch gear here a little bit because the big news. Donald Trump feels vindicated that there was no collusion, and we've been talking. Actually, there is something where you thought that, for example, there'll be indictments coming, targeting Jared Kushner and others.
I still think they're coming.
Yeah, but it didn't happen.
From the state.
It didn't happen.
Right.
We spent, I have to say, no one that I have spoken to or I've listened to all the pundits with their wall-to-wall coverage, none of them has read the entire
Nobody has.
Mueller report.
No, it's 300 pages.
We just have a summary saying that there was no collusion, and Donald Trump is taking it and cashing it at the bank. He's just
victory dance.
It's just he's doing a victory dance. No collusion. But this is what I think that was missed, and I think it was a major distraction. In my opinion, that whole thing, even though the way it was played was a very major tactical error on the part, even though Mueller has to be neutral, right? But how many indictments have we had?
Well, just to put it bluntly, 37
and
indictments.
how many ended up in jail, like the Cohen, or they're going...
Manafort's in jail.
So no one is now talking about this.
Papadopoulos is in jail, in jail. Yeah.
Nobody's talking about this. I mean, the fact is, they kind of cherry-picking and they're saying no collusion. I mean, in my opinion, it was a tactical mistake. The tactical mistake is that Mueller should have waited until he finished his entire report and then said, here is my report, and now I'm indicting 1, 2, 3, naming all these people. And we don't have enough evidence to indict the president, to say that the president has colluded. Nevertheless, we have this many names
But
who
actually,
are going
Jamal,
to be indicted.
I think
then
that-
people would have
Yeah.
understood the magnitude
No, I think that's
of
right.
this whole infested corruption that is going on around the White House. But let me just finish one thing. I think what was missed, yes, and then people say, oh, I don't know why you keep coming back to Israel. I really don't. I think there is an Israel gate and not a Russia gate.
Absolutely.
You know, and this is something that has not been discussed. Imagine, Jess, remember when we learned, when they were talking about retired General Michael Flynn.
Right.
This was, and this is something that got brushed off under the rug very quickly. In December of 2016, the United Nations Security Council was debating a draft resolution that condemned Israeli settlement expansion in the occupied territories as a flagrant violation under international law that was dangerously imperiling the viability of an independent Palestinian state. So at the time, of course, Trump was a candidate. So the Obama administration had made it clear that the U.S. was planning. He's pretty peeved at the time with Netanyahu, if you remember.
Right, Obama was, right.
Obama towards the end. So he made it very clear that he was planning to have the United States abstain on the resolution. Normally, 99.9% of the time, the U.S. casts a veto on behalf of Israel. That was the one time he was saying, because no veto, because he was noting that the settlements have no legal validity. This is from the words. I was looking at this, and observing how the settlement problem has gotten so much worse that it is now putting at risk the two-state solution and so forth. This is, and then he was talking about giving examples. This is the Obama administration recalling how even during Donald Trump, he called for a real settlement freeze in 1982. And while George H.W. Bush tried to curb Israeli settlement building plans by briefly cutting off U.S. loan guarantees to Israel in 1991. So while all of this happening, what happened? This is when retired General Michael Flynn was trying to make a deal.
Right.
How they can circumvent or delay or prevent, right, the Obama administration.
I remember that.
And from casting that vote. So at the time, you have to remember also, this is around December of 2016, General Flynn was part of the transition team. He was part of Donald Trump presidential transition team. So he was acting on behalf of Donald Trump.
That's right.
Because he was part of the team. So he was working on to influence some governments, right, to either
veto.
delay or vote against or defeat the resolution. So basically, he was working against the sitting president and the sitting administration.
That's right.
During that time. All of this, by the way, Flynn contacted the Russian ambassador about the pending vote. So this is the connection with Russia. He informed the Russian ambassador about the incoming administration opposition to the resolution and requested that Russia vote against or delay the resolution. This is all in the court cases of Michael Flynn. Washed, swept under the rug.
Funny how people forget that.
So people forgotten about this. They focus on Russia. We've forgotten that this major conspiracy to undermine a sitting administration and a sitting president, all on behalf of Israel. No one talks about this.
No, I think that's exactly
I'd like
right.
to talk about this. I'd like people to focus about this. This is all. You could read all about this in the indictment papers, in the court case. Go back to December of 2016. You'll find it all there.
I think that's really a very cogent analysis, Jamal. We do tend to forget that. Let's also not forget that many of the technologies of social influence and manipulating opinion and the psyops that were alleged to be used by the Russians to influence the U.S. election were techniques and software developed by the Israeli psyops, Mossad, intelligence community, most likely similarly used by the Russians. And we still don't know about the Israeli influence in the U.S. election at that time, too. Still a story that is going to be coming out. By the way, Jamal, just to kind of I want to push this a little bit about the Mueller report because you made so many good points. The Mueller report was never about collusion. It really was not. His mandate was really more about finding if there was obstruction of justice. And what's interesting, it was just breaking news today that the Mueller report is 300 pages, and yet our Attorney General, Barr, summarized a 300-page report in 4 pages in which there's only 2 partial quotes from a 300-page report that Bob Mueller did. And Bob Mueller did say clearly, and Robert Mueller did say in his report clearly and unequivocally, we know this, that the report neither, does neither exonerate or implicate President Trump in the obstruction of justice claim that he tried to obstruct justice in this.
Right.
So, Jamal, we have a lot more information that's going to be coming out about the Mueller report. Barr's 4-page summary is clearly incomplete. It's clearly politically driven. And by the way, it's not William Barr's decision, Jamal, to decide whether or not there was collusion. That's not the Attorney General's mandate. The Attorney General's mandate is to read the report and provide a summary to Congress. What we're going to find, I believe, is that this summary, this 4-page summary, is woefully inadequate. We're going to find compelling evidence that probably there was obstruction of justice because the president was not exonerated. And I'm going to stand by my predictions that indictments are coming.
I'm going to hold you to this.
Because I do believe that Bob Mueller did something very smart. He did many smart things, but one of the smart things he did is rather than take on the president and his family from the special, prosecutor point of view, he decided to farm out all of these other investigations to state agencies like the, Southern District of New York, which is investigating a lot of these things. And I think we're going to find other federal prosecutors, other, DOJ offices in these, in these states are going to come after the Trumps and the Kushners with state charges, which will be very compelling, having to do with obstruction, having to do with illegality, and we know, for example, this just came out in the last couple of days too. Deutsche Bank has released all of its financial information regarding, some of Trump's, illegal applications. He clearly lied on all these applications. He inflated his assets, deflated his debts to make himself look as if he was wealthier. So irrespective of the Mueller report, Jamal, which I still think we're going to find lots of problems, this story is not over.
Well, talking about inflating the assets and
but he's anointed by God, so I guess it's okay.
My CPA this week, he told me that I was, on paper,
a billionaire,
wealthier than Donald Trump because I've actually paid taxes. So he because he said if you examine Donald, that's why Donald Trump is not releasing his taxes, because you're going to find out that he basically paid 0 taxes for these years.
Massive illegality.
And obtained millions and millions of dollars worth of loans and transactions. And then at the end of the day, he paid 0 money in taxes.
Well, we also know from Michael Cohen, Jamal, that when Donald Trump, I guess, tried to buy the Buffalo Bills when they were up for sale and had to go to Deutsche Bank to kind of get a loan for some of that money, Michael Cohen said under oath that, yes, he put together a false financial, package for Deutsche Bank that overinflated Donald Trump's assets and reported his debts. That's called fraud. That's
and
illegal.
Michael Cohen should know that because he was his lawyer, and he was doing the same thing by overinflating the value of his medallions.
Exactly.
And obtaining loans. So they
Exactly.
played this game. We have a few
we only
minutes
have a
left,
few minutes,
and
Jamal.
last week we were not on the air, and you were traveling, and so a horrible thing happened.
Yeah, we
in
should
New
talk
Zealand.
about that.
And so we didn't get to talk about it. The brutal massacre of 50 worshippers in New Zealand. Still the community there is mourning, and we mourn with them. I think the whole world. But at the same time, I have a shout out. Even during this terrible time, to their prime minister.
Amazing.
An amazing world leader.
Why can't we have a leader like
Imagine,
that?
aside from her sympathy and action, but imagine a country after this happened, right?
Right.
Within a very short period of time,
1 week, Jamal.
they ban assault weapons.
Yep, within
We've
1
been
week.
talking about it. And again, it's all connected internationally. Sadly, we also learned this week that 2 of the children of the
Marjorie
survivors
Stoneman, yeah.
in the school committed suicide.
Right.
One father of
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook also
Yeah.
committed suicide.
Yeah, it's sad.
We are still debating about gun control in this country. We're not debating it even. It's
There's
there.
no debate.
The NRA just controls the agenda in Washington, D.C., while you have a country that was basically shaken by this heinous crime. And they took action. And the leader took action, and she was able to bring her community together.
Right.
In such a terrible time, where we have here Donald Trump, when he sent his condolences, he didn't even mention the Muslim community there. He said, I spoke to the Prime Minister and I gave my
the people
condolences
of
to
New
the
Zealand.
people of New Zealand. This is the difference
Right.
that we're seeing here.
I want to just say three things about Christchurch, Jamal. It's a tragedy of unimaginable viciousness. The killer, in his manifesto, said that he was inspired, essentially, by Donald Trump.
That's right.
I think, why aren't we saying more about that? That he was inspired by what Donald Trump was doing to promote basically white supremacy.
And Donald Trump, when he was interviewed about the rise of white supremacy, and he said, "No, this is a fringe element."
It's not.
He's not.
No, it's
gonna even confess to the fact that this is basically more people are getting killed in this country by white supremacists.
Absolutely,
than any other
and
group.
so I think okay, maybe we need to look at that. But the other thing that I found really compelling about Christchurch, Jamal, all the things that you said, amazing leader, coming together of a community. When they banned assault weapons in Christchurch, Jamal, you had people who own these weapons come to their local police departments and handing in their weapons themselves.
Yeah.
Handing in their weapons themselves. Can you imagine first of all, can't imagine ever.
No, we have a mad rush in this country.
People are buying them. Yeah.
And stocking on weapons. So this is the difference.
And even with the bump stocks, Jamal, the bump stocks that make semi-automatic weapons, automatic weapons.
Right.
They even tried, that was supposed to go in effect. It went into effect this week. Some of the supporters of the NRA filed a petition with the Supreme Court to even stop that.
Yep.
That's how crazy it is. Well, I guess on that note, Jamal, we've got a lot to talk about here on Arab Talk. And, there's a lot going on right now. When you have a mass murderer saying that he feels inspired, essentially, by Donald Trump, and you have the president giving away land that is not his and doing his end zone dance based on a couple of sentences that were taken out of a 300-page report. I feel like we're headed for some rough territory.
And the other thing is just, and in a sad way, we've been talking about Islamophobia for how long?
Well, when did 9/11?
We've been talking
Okay,
about it for
17
many
years.
and we've been talking and warning about it. In particular, for the past year, we've had expert panelists.
Right.
We've had expert guests. We had Dr. Hatem Bazian in a sad way just a few days before the massacre in New Zealand. And it's real, ladies and gentlemen. Islamophobia is real. It's on the rise. If we're not going to do something about it, it's just going to get worse.
Thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO in San Francisco. We're at 89.5 FM. You can follow us on ArabTalkRadio.com, where you can find all of our streaming. And where else can you find us, Jamal?
Well, just go to our website, ArabTalkRadio.com, and you can subscribe for free to all of our archived material on iTunes, SoundCloud.
All of those places.
And all these places.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.